Beloved, tonight I stand before you under a divine assignment. There are wounds you smile over, battles you never announced, tears you cried in silence while everyone thought you were strong. But hear me clearly. Nothing hidden is invisible to God. The same God who sees your public praise also attends to your private pain. And tonight, he has come to heal what you buried and restore what you thought was lost. Some of you have been surviving, not living. You've been functioning, not flourishing. You kept going because people depended on you, but inside something cracked. Yeah, the Spirit of the Lord says, I am not just mending you. I am renewing you. Joy is not gone. It has been waiting for permission to rise again. This is your moment of divine reversal. I decree that the pain you never talked about will no longer have authority over your future. God is touching emotional scars, silent disappointments, deferred dreams, and long-standing grief. What trauma tried to define, grace is about to rewrite. You will not leave this prayer the same way you entered it. As we pray, expect God to do heart surgery without leaving a scar. Expect laughter where heaviness lived. Expect oil where ashes have sat too long. And as your faith connects with this moment, let your agreement be seen. Like this video, subscribe to this channel for daily prayer, and write Amen in the comments as a prophetic seal. And before we go deeper, I want you to comment one thing you are believing God for today. Declare it boldly. Heaven is listening, angels are responding, and joy is being restored right now. Beloved, tonight I want us to enter a sacred space together, a place of stillness where your soul can breathe and your spirit can be heard. I want us to focus on a truth that is often ignored, even in the midst of our most vibrant outward appearances. The hidden pain. It is the pain that doesn't make headlines in our lives, the grief that does not announce itself to our friends or family, the ache that lingers quietly in the corners of our hearts. So many of you have learned to walk through life with this pain tucked away, hidden beneath smiles, concealed beneath laughter, and buried beneath accomplishments. You have learned to survive with it, to function with it, but survival is not the design of God for your life. God's desire is for you to thrive, to flourish, to live fully. And that requires that hidden pain to surface so it can be healed. There is power in naming what has been hidden. So often we think that if we ignore the wound, it will disappear. But the truth is, ignored pain has a way of multiplying quietly. It influences our decisions, it colors our relationships, it whispers lies into our minds, and sometimes it keeps us from walking in the fullness of joy that God has promised. That hidden pain, the kind that lingers long after everyone else that has moved on, is not a secret from God. He sees it. He knows the tears you've cried when no one was watching. He hears the prayers you whispered under your breath when despair pressed against your heart. And even though you may have hidden it from the world, there is nothing hidden from him. He is ready to meet you right where you are. He is ready to uncover, to reveal, to bring to the surface every layer of sorrow, every trace of hurt, and to shine his healing light upon it. I want you to imagine just for a moment a deep, still lake. The surface may look calm, even beautiful, reflecting the sky above. But beneath the surface, currents may be swirling, unseen. Rocks and debris may have settled on the bottom. There may be mud that clouds the water and makes it impossible to see clearly. That lake is like your inner world. On the outside, you may seem peaceful, even joyful. You may appear to have it all together, but beneath there may be unresolved pain, unspoken grief, disappointments that have not been processed, and memories that sting every time they surface. God is inviting you to lift the water, to stir the depths, to allow the hidden to rise to the surface, not to shame you, not to judge you, but to heal you. Healing begins when the unseen is revealed. Healing begins when the soul is honest about its condition, when the spirit confesses its need for divine intervention, and when we say, God, I cannot carry this alone. I surrender this to you. Many of you have learned to be strong for others, to hold yourself together because someone else needed you to. Maybe you have been the rock in your family, the dependable one at work, the shoulder for friends, and yet, who has been the rock for you? Who has been present with you in your hidden moments of despair? The good news, beloved, is that God has always been present. He has not walked away. He has not abandoned you. And now, in this sacred moment, He is calling you to bring every hidden pain into the open before Him, because He is not interested in leaving it buried where it can fester. He is not content with mere survival. He wants to bring it into the light so that His healing power can touch it, transform it, and set you free from it. I want you to think about the ways that hidden pain shows up in your life. Perhaps it appears as anxiety that you cannot explain, moments of depression that descend without warning, or unexplained anger that surfaces at people you love. Perhaps it is the unhealed heartbreak of a relationship lost, the sting of rejection that you thought you had forgotten, or the disappointment of dreams deferred. Hidden pain can manifest physically, emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. Sometimes it is subtle, almost invisible, like a shadow that stretches across your days, dimming the brightness of your joy. Other times it is raw and piercing, cutting into the core of your confidence and sense of worth. But every hidden pain, regardless of its form or intensity, is calling out for acknowledgement. It is begging to be seen, to be understood, and ultimately to be healed. I want you to hear me carefully. God's desire is not to leave you in the shadows. He wants to bring your pain into the light, not to condemn you, but to redeem you. Redemption begins with recognition. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot be whole in areas where you refuse to acknowledge brokenness. And so tonight, I encourage you to give voice to your hidden pain. Speak it aloud if you can. Whisper it if you must. Write it down if that is easier. Just do not let it remain buried any longer. Because in the moment you name it, in the moment you bring it to God's attention, healing begins. It is in that sacred space of honesty, of transparency, of surrender that the Spirit of God moves powerfully to restore, renew, and revive. Consider the examples from the Word of God where pain was not ignored, but brought into the light. David, the man after God's own heart, wrote Psalms that expressed his deepest anguish, his hidden fears, and his inner struggles. He did not pretend they didn't exist. He cried out to God. He lamented, and in that honest expression, he found healing, comfort, and restoration. Job, too, brought his pain before God, even when it seemed unbearable. He questioned, he wrestled, he wept, but he never pretended the pain didn't exist. And in his vulnerability, God ultimately brought vindication, blessing, and renewal. These examples teach us that God honors transparency. He responds to those who are willing to bring what has been hidden into the light of His presence. Now, let us talk about the process of letting hidden pain surface. It can be uncomfortable. It may feel risky. Perhaps you have hidden your pain for so long that the idea of exposing it feels dangerous. Maybe you fear that if you acknowledge it, you will be consumed by it. But beloved, God's healing power is stronger than your fear. His light is brighter than your darkness. When hidden pain is lifted into His presence, it loses its control. What once held power over you begins to dissolve. What once whispered lies of hopelessness now hears the voice of truth and love. This process of surfacing pain is not a sign of weakness. It is a declaration of strength. It is a statement that you are ready to no longer be held captive by what you endured, that you are ready to walk in freedom, and that you are ready to receive the fullness of joy that God has promised. I want to invite you to imagine your heart as a garden. For some time, weeds have been growing in the soil of your spirit. They were planted by hurtful experiences, broken relationships, missed opportunities, and unspoken trauma. You may have tried to ignore the weeds, but ignoring them does not make them disappear. Now, imagine God as the garden, coming into your garden with a gentle hand, ready to remove the weeds of hidden pain. He does so not with harshness, but with careful, loving attention. Each root pulled represents a layer of hurt being extracted. Each seed of healing planted represents a promise of new life. And as the garden is cleared, tilled, and renewed, the soil becomes fertile once again for joy, peace, and purpose to grow. This is the divine process of bringing hidden pain to the surface for healing. As we continue, I want you to focus on the notion that no pain is too small, no hurt is too insignificant for God to notice. Perhaps you think it's just a memory, it's just a small disappointment, it's just a fleeting moment of sadness. But God sees every detail, every tear, every sigh, every moment you believed no one was watching. Hidden pain is never too minor for his attention. Every sorrow that has lodged itself in the recesses of your heart is worthy of his healing touch. And his desire is to restore every lost fragment of joy, every stolen moment of peace, and every part of your spirit that has been weighed down by the invisible burden of grief. Tonight, I want to call on you to surrender every hidden pain. Speak it aloud if you can. Say, God, here is what I have carried in silence. I lay it at your feet. Heal me, restore me, make me whole again. Let the tears flow if they must. Let the heartache surface. Do not be afraid of what emerges, because the God who sees, the God who knows, the God who loves you beyond measure is also the God who heals. He will meet you in that moment of vulnerability. He will breathe life into your spirit. He will replace heaviness with light, sorrow with joy, and despair with hope. I want you to picture for a moment a river. Hidden pain is like a stagnant pool that has been sitting for years. When it finally flows into the river of God's presence, it becomes moving water. It is refreshed. It is cleansed. It begins to sparkle in the sunlight of God's love. Every wound that seemed permanent is being renewed. Every heartbreak that seemed irreparable is being restored. Every tear that was unseen by human eyes is being caught by the angels of God. You are being brought into a place of wholeness, where pain no longer has dominion over your life, where hidden grief is transformed into a testimony, and where every shadow of sorrow is replaced with radiant light. Beloved, I want to affirm you tonight. It is okay to let it surface. It is okay to acknowledge that it exists. It is okay to say, I have been hurt, I have been broken, I have been silent, but now I am ready for healing. You do not have to carry it alone any longer. You do not have to pretend it is not there. God is ready to receive it, and his spirit is ready to bring it to the surface so that it can be healed. As the hidden pain surfaces, you will notice freedom beginning to stir within you. You will feel a weight lifting. You will notice a lightness in your spirit. And as that healing continues, the joy that has been dormant, waiting patiently for its turn, will rise. This is the promise of God. He does not allow pain to linger indefinitely. He brings it into his light, transforms it, and uses it for your ultimate good. The God who heals hidden pain is also the God who restores laughter, the God who restores dreams, the God who restores peace, and the God who restores purpose. Beloved, I want to take you to a place tonight where your heart can breathe, where your soul can rest, and where your spirit can remember the fullness of God's promises. There is a truth that is too often overlooked in our fast-paced, demanding lives. Joy is not optional. It is a gift. It is a divine inheritance, and it is meant to flow freely within you. Yet so many of us have allowed circumstances, disappointments, betrayals, and unmet expectations to steal this precious gift. And while sorrow may have lingered, God's desire for you has never changed. He wants your joy restored. Not someday, not later when things get easier, but now, without delay. Consider for a moment the weight of life you may have been carrying. The mornings that start heavy, the conversations that drain, the setbacks that keep repeating, the relationships that are strained. All of this can rob your soul of joy, and yet God whispers softly in your spirit, I have not forgotten you. I have joy prepared for you. I have a restoration ready for your heart. It is not the joy of shallow happiness or fleeting pleasure. It is deep, abiding, unshakable joy. It is the joy that comes when your spirit rests fully in God's presence, knowing that He is faithful, that He is sovereign, and that He is always working for your good, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. Joy is not dependent on the world. It does not wait for perfect conditions, flawless timing, or the approval of people. True joy is anchored in the reality of God's love for you, His faithfulness, and the unchanging nature of His promises. So often we allow our emotions to dictate our joy. When things go wrong, we feel sad. When plans fail, we feel defeated. When people disappoint us, we feel bitter. But joy, beloved, is not an emotion to be negotiated. It is a choice to be embraced, a gift to be received, and a fruit of the Spirit to be cultivated. God wants you to experience this joy fully. He wants it to saturate your being, to spill into every area of your life, to touch your relationships, your work, your dreams, and even your rest. I want you to picture joy as a river flowing within you. Right now, perhaps that river feels blocked. Debris of fear, disappointment, grief, and discouragement may have accumulated, slowing the current. But God is a divine engineer, a masterful restorer, and His desire is to remove the obstacles and allow your joy to flow freely. Picture Him carefully, lovingly clearing each obstruction. He lifts the stones of regret. He removes the branches of bitterness. He washes away the mud of sorrow. And as He does, the water begins to flow again. It sparkles, it refreshes, it nourishes your soul, and it restores the rhythm of life that was intended for you. Many of you have been living in a state of delayed joy. You've said, I'll be happy when I achieve this goal, or I'll feel joy when this problem is solved, or I can celebrate once the storm passes. But beloved, God's joy is not meant to be postponed. It is present tense. It is available here in this very moment, regardless of what is happening around you. You may not understand how it is possible, and you may feel resistant because your soul has grown accustomed to compromise, sadness, or merely surviving. But God calls you now to receive joy immediately, to welcome it as a guest into your heart, to allow it to illuminate the darkness, to breathe life into weary places, and to remind you that your life is not defined by your pain, but by His power to restore. I want to remind you that joy and peace are not the same. Peace is the calm that comes in the storm. Joy is the melody that rises despite the storm. Peace says, all is well because God is in control. Joy says, all is well because God is in me. They are siblings working together to sustain the soul, and yet joy has a unique ability to penetrate deep into the chambers of your heart, lifting heaviness, renewing hope, and strengthening faith. When God restores your joy, it changes everything. It changes how you view your past. It changes how you navigate your present. It changes the way you envision your future. Restoration of joy is the restoration of vision, the revival of hope, and the renewal of strength. Now, consider the times when your joy has been stolen. Perhaps it was through betrayal, when someone you trusted turned away. Perhaps it was through failure, when efforts you invested so much in did not produce the results you hoped for. Perhaps it was through loss, when relationships, opportunities, or dreams were taken unexpectedly. Each of these moments leaves a mark, a wound, a space where joy has been displaced. And yet, God does not leave those empty spaces as they are. He comes to fill them with Himself, with His love, with his goodness and with the fruit of joy. He brings back the laughter, the delight, the wonder, and the pleasure that your soul has longed for. Restoring joy is also a process of releasing what is not yours to carry. The heaviness of unforgiveness, resentment, regret, shame, and bitterness can weigh down your heart and block joy from arising. God wants you to let these go. He wants you to lay them down at his feet. Imagine placing each one into his hands. Every regret, every painful memory, every accusation, every burden that is not meant for you to bear. As you do, you will notice a lightness creeping into your spirit. You will begin to feel an expansion in your chest, a deep inhale of divine presence filling every hollow, and slowly, steadily, joy begins to return, filling spaces where darkness once lingered. And you want to invite you to reflect on the beauty of joy as a spiritual practice. It is not superficial. It is not forced. It is cultivated through gratitude, worship, prayer, and surrender. When you begin to recognize the gifts of each day, when you focus on God's faithfulness instead of your failures, when you acknowledge even the small mercies and moments of beauty around you, your soul begins to align with joy. It is a gentle, intentional decision to focus on what is good, pure, and true. And it is in this alignment that restoration occurs. God restores joy when you open your heart to see him at work, even in places where it seems impossible. Think about the story of Paul and Silas in the prison. They were in chains, beaten, confined, and misunderstood. Yet the Bible tells us that they prayed and sang praises to God. Their joy was not stolen by circumstances. It was anchored in their faith, in their relationship with the Almighty. And as they worshiped, their chains were broken, the prison doors opened, and freedom and restoration came. Beloved, joy is not the absence of trials. Joy is the presence of God in the midst of trials. And when he restores it in your heart, even your struggles become a stage for his power, a canvas for his glory, and a testimony of his faithfulness. Restoration of joy also brings restoration of perspective. When joy is restored, you see life through the lens of hope rather than despair, through the lens of possibility rather than limitation, through the lens of God's promises rather than human circumstance. Joy allows you to rise above the temporary setbacks and view your life from the vantage point of eternity. It strengthens your faith, refreshes your mind, and empowers your spirit to keep moving forward with confidence and courage. Joy does not just change your emotions, it changes your trajectory. I want you to imagine the physical impact of joy. Joy affects your health, your energy, and your overall well-being. When your spirit is aligned with joy, your body experiences less stress, your mind experiences more clarity, and your soul experiences deeper rest. The restoration of joy is holistic. It touches every aspect of your being. It floods your heart with vitality, your mind with hope, your relationship with warmth, and your spirit with peace. It is not an abstract concept. It is life-giving, soul-renewing, and transformative. Beloved, God is calling you now to receive joy without delay. Don't wait for a perfect day, a perfect relationship, a perfect job, or a perfect season. Joy is available now, and it comes as a gift from him. It cannot be manufactured. It cannot be earned. It cannot be negotiated. It is his presence, his spirit, his promise flowing into your life, lifting every burden, restoring every wound, and reviving every dormant dream. Say to your heart tonight, I will not wait any longer. I will embrace the joy God is giving me. I will allow it to saturate my soul. I will let it flow freely in my life. Picture your life as a tapestry. For years, dark threads of pain, sorrow, disappointment, and loss have been woven through it. But now, God is restoring the vibrant threads of joy. He is weaving color, light, and brilliance back into the fabric of your life. The picture becomes complete, beautiful, and radiant. What was once dull, heavy, and fragmented is now full of life, fullness, and divine glory. This is the power of restored joy. It transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, the mundane into the miraculous, and the heavy into the light. I want to remind you that joy is contagious. When God restores it within you, it does not stay confined to you alone. It spills into your home, your family, your community, and your workplace. Your laughter becomes a balm for others' weary hearts. Your hope becomes a light for others' dark paths. Your restored joy inspires, encourages, and uplifts everyone around you. The restoration of joy is not just for you. It is for the world to witness. A reflection of God's goodness and faithfulness in action. Beloved, tonight is your moment to embrace restoration. Do not delay. Open your heart fully, receive His presence, and allow the Spirit to breathe joy into every area that has been weary, heavy, or burdened. Remember, joy is not just a feeling, it is a divine state, a spiritual inheritance, and a gift meant for you. When God restores it, it changes everything. Your perspective, your energy, your relationships, your faith, and your destiny. Beloved, tonight I want to speak directly to the hidden places of your heart, to the emotional wounds that have weighed heavily upon you for far too long. There are scars you carry, some so deep that you barely remember life without them. There are hurts that continue to influence your thoughts, your decisions, your relationships, and even the way you see yourself. These emotional wounds, though invisible to the world, have held authority over your life, dictating your responses, shaping your perspective, and subtly controlling the direction of your soul. But I am here to declare to you tonight, in the authority of the Spirit, that those wounds do not have the right to rule over you any longer. They must lose authority. They must lose power. They must be dethroned. Have you noticed how the past has a way of creeping into the present? How old rejections, betrayals, or disappointments continue to influence your choices today? Perhaps you are cautious in your relationships because of a heartbreak that happened years ago. Perhaps you hesitate to step into your calling because past failures have left a mark on your confidence. Perhaps you find yourself repeating negative patterns because unresolved pain is whispering lies into your mind. These emotional wounds, though historical in nature, can live in your present if they are not surrendered to God. And this is the moment, beloved, when God invites you to release them. Not to ignore them, not to minimize them, but to confront them, bring them into His presence, and allow His healing power to strip them of their authority. I want to ask you tonight, where are you still carrying the weight of the past? What old hurt continues to define your present reality? Is it anger? Is it bitterness? Is it fear? Is it grief? I want you to take a moment and in your heart answer that question honestly. The first step toward freedom is recognition. You cannot dismantle what you refuse to acknowledge. Every emotional wound that has authority over your life is an area where you need to invite God to intervene. Write it down if it helps. Speak it aloud if you can. Whatever it takes to make it tangible, to confront it so that it can be healed, so that it can lose its power over you. Beloved, emotional wounds are deceptive. They tell you lies, convincing you that you are still broken, that you are still powerless, that you are still unworthy. But the truth of God's word says otherwise. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are not limited by what you endured. You are not controlled by the hands that hurt you or by the circumstances that failed you. You are defined by the God who created you, redeemed you, and destined you for greatness. And when God steps in to heal those emotional wounds, He does not merely cover them or mask them. He transforms them, repurposes them, and restores you to full authority over your life. I want to give you a picture of what it looks like to dethrone emotional wounds. Imagine a king sitting on a throne, ruling a kingdom with power, making decrees, influencing decisions, and shaping the lives of all who live there. That king represents the authority of your emotional pain. It has been in control, making decisions for your life, influencing your relationships, and dictating your sense of self. But God, in his power, comes as the ultimate ruler. He removes that king from the throne. He strips away its power. He dismantles its influence. And he replaces it with his presence, his truth, and his authority. You are no longer subject to the commands of past wounds. You are now subject to the rule of the Almighty. And under his reign, freedom, peace, and joy flow freely. Let me ask you again, what emotional wounds have you allowed to control your life? I want you to pause and reflect. I want you to comment honestly in the section below. This is your opportunity to break the silence. You must identify what has been holding authority over your heart. What patterns do you see repeating? What fears have remained unchecked? What bitterness has lingered? Speak it into existence, for confession brings freedom, and honesty invites healing. God is listening. The angels are watching. Your declaration tonight is a step toward liberation. Some of you have carried emotional wounds for so long that you no longer even remember when they began. Perhaps they originated in childhood experiences, family conflicts, early betrayals, or critical words spoken over you. Perhaps they came from failures, losses, or injustices that seemed unbearable at the time. And while those wounds are part of your story, they are not meant to dictate your future. They're not meant to determine your worth. They're not meant to decide how high you can rise. God is calling you now to reclaim your power, to dismantle the influence of those wounds, and to restore your life to a place of peace, clarity, and divine authority. I want you to visualize your heart as a strong fortress. For years, emotional wounds have set up their banners on the walls, claiming territory, influencing decisions, and shaping your worldview. But God is coming as a warrior of light, as a master strategist to reclaim every inch of ground that has been occupied by hurt, fear, or bitterness. Each wall that has been built from pain is being torn down. Each banner of control is being removed. Every influence of old wounds is being neutralized. And as this process unfolds, your heart becomes free to experience love, joy, peace, and purpose without restriction. Emotional wounds do not just affect you. They impact your relationships, your work, your decision-making, and even your spiritual walk. When unresolved, they create barriers between you and others, between you and God, and even between you and yourself. Perhaps you avoid intimacy because of fear of rejection. Perhaps you doubt God's goodness because of past betrayal. Perhaps you hold back your potential because past failures have whispered lies that you are not enough. But the authority of those wounds ends tonight. God is removing their power. He is bringing restoration to every broken place, healing to every hidden hurt, and clarity to every area clouded by pain. I want you to imagine now the act of giving your wounds to God. Take them one by one and place them in his hands. Say, Lord, here is the anger I've carried. Here is the bitterness I've allowed to define me. Here is the fear I've clung to for years. Heal me, restore me. Take authority over these wounds. Let them lose their power. Beloved, this is not a passive act. It is a declaration of faith. It is an acknowledgement that you cannot overcome these wounds alone. And it is an invitation for God's healing and restoration to take full effect. I want to ask you to reflect deeply on this question. How have your emotional wounds affected your ability to step into your calling? How have they influenced your relationships, your decisions, or your self-image? I want you to comment honestly below. Speak it as a prayer, a declaration, or even a confession. Naming it allows God to begin the work of transformation. Do not hold back. Do not minimize it. He sees it all, and his spirit is ready to bring freedom and authority back to your heart. Many of us have learned to numb ourselves against emotional pain. We distract ourselves with work, with activity, with busyness, or even with relationships, trying to fill the void left by unresolved wounds. But numbing is not healing. Avoiding is not restoration. True authority over emotional wounds comes only when they are confronted, surrendered, and redeemed. God is inviting you to face the wounds, not with fear, but with faith. He is inviting you to allow his power to remove their authority so that you can step into the fullness of life he has prepared for you. Consider the role of forgiveness in this process. Emotional wounds are often reinforced by the refusal to forgive, whether it is forgiving others, forgiving circumstances, or even forgiving yourself. Forgiveness does not mean that what happened was acceptable. It does not mean that you deny the pain or pretend it did not occur. Forgiveness is the act of releasing the grip that those experiences have on your soul. When you forgive, you take away the authority of the wound. You refuse to allow it to continue controlling your life. You declare, Lord, I will not let this wound rule me any longer. I choose your healing, your restoration, and your peace. Beloved, tonight I want you to visualize a new reality. Picture your emotional wounds as clouds that have hovered over you, casting shadows across your heart, mind, and spirit. Now imagine the sunlight of God's presence breaking through those clouds, dissolving the darkness and illuminating every corner of your soul. The clouds are not gone because of your strength. They are gone because of his power. The sunlight represents freedom, joy, and authority restored to you. This is what happens when emotional wounds lose their power. They no longer dictate your identity, your decisions, or your destiny. I want to remind you that emotional wounds are not destiny. They are not labels. They are not definitions of who you are. They are experiences that God can use, refine, and transform. What once caused you to stumble can now become a stepping stone. What once caused shame can now become a testimony. What once caused despair can now become a source of wisdom, empathy, and strength. But this transformation requires action. It requires recognition, surrender, and agreement with God's power to remove the authority of those wounds. I want to ask you one final question. Are you ready to release the authority of your emotional wounds tonight? Are you ready to allow God to restore your heart, your mind, and your spirit? Comment below with a bold, "Yes, Lord," if you are prepared to surrender fully and receive his healing. This is a sacred moment of agreement. Your declaration activates the power of God. It invites his spirit to move with precision, love, and authority, restoring every area of your life that has been under the influence of past hurt. Beloved, as you reflect on these words, know this: every wound, every hurt, every emotional scar has a story, but that story does not have to continue controlling your life. You are called to rise above the past. You are called to reclaim your authority. You are called to live free, empowered, and fully alive in God's presence. And as God begins to work in your heart tonight, you will feel a shift. You will sense a lifting of heaviness. You will notice clarity returning. You will feel joy creeping back into spaces that were once shadowed by pain. Beloved, tonight I want to speak to the hidden places of your life where weakness has silently resided. There are moments, aren't there, when you have felt inadequate, exhausted, and incapable of moving forward. Perhaps you have faced challenges that seemed impossible to overcome, struggles that weighed heavily on your spirit, or responsibilities that felt far beyond your capacity. In these moments, the enemy whispers lies, convincing you that you are not strong enough, that you cannot endure, that you are alone in your struggle. But I am here to declare tonight, in the authority of God's Spirit, that your weakness does not have the final word. The one who created you, the one who sustains you, the one who called you by name, has sent divine strength to take its place. The silent weakness that has held you back is being replaced right now by a power far greater than anything you have ever known. Consider for a moment the seasons of your life where you have carried burdens quietly. Perhaps you did not tell anyone the depth of your fatigue. Perhaps you concealed the anxiety that kept you awake at night. Perhaps you endured hardship in silence because you thought revealing it would make you appear weak or incapable. Beloved, those silent struggles have been heavy, but they are not permanent. God's strength is not just a distant promise. It is a present reality. It is available to you here and now. It is meant to infuse your spirit, bolster your resolve, and equip you to rise above every challenge, every limitation, and every obstacle that has sought to hold you down. I want you to reflect on what silent weakness has looked like in your life. Has it appeared as fear that keeps you from taking necessary steps? Has it appeared as self-doubt that prevents you from embracing opportunities? Has it appeared as weariness that drains your spirit and clouds your mind? Whatever form it has taken, know that God is ready to intervene. Divine strength is not simply the ability to endure. It is power that transforms your capacity, renews your hope, and equips you to step into destiny with confidence. It is strength that carries you through what you cannot carry alone. And it is available now without delay. I want to ask you tonight, where have you been relying on your own strength instead of God's? Have you tried to push through difficulties in your own power, only to find yourself exhausted and frustrated? Beloved, this is the moment to release self-reliance and embrace divine reliance. God's strength is not limited by your limitations. It is not hindered by your fears. It is not restrained by your circumstances. When you surrender your weakness to Him, He fills that space with supernatural power, clarity, and resilience. It is not a temporary boost. It is a transformation of your very being, enabling you to endure, overcome, and triumph where before you would have struggled. I want you to visualize your weakness as a container that has been holding you back. It is small, fragile, and insufficient. For years, it has limited your capacity to move forward. But now, imagine God pouring His strength into that container. At first, it may seem small, barely noticeable. But as His power flows in, it expands the capacity of your heart, your mind, and your spirit. It fills you with courage where fear once lived, with determination where hesitation once resided, and with energy where weariness had settled. What once seemed impossible now becomes possible. What once drained you now empowers you. The divine strength of God is not measured by human ability. It is measured by His presence within you. Some of you have been silently battling exhaustion for so long that you have grown accustomed to it. You have labeled it as just life or the way things are, accepting it as inevitable. But beloved, God did not create you to live in weakness. He created you to live in strength. He created you to live in victory. He created you to walk boldly into your calling, to step confidently into your destiny, and to operate with a power that exceeds any challenge you face. The silent weakness that has lingered for years is being replaced tonight by divine strength, a strength that does not fail, a strength that does not falter, and a strength that does not depend on your effort alone. I want you to consider the examples of strength in the Word of God. David, though small and underestimated, faced Goliath not by his own strength, but by the power of God working through him. Moses, overwhelmed by responsibility and doubt, led a nation through the wilderness, not in his own wisdom, but in the strength of the Lord. Elijah, weary and discouraged, was lifted by God's power to continue the work that seemed too great for him. In each example, human weakness was transformed by divine strength. Beloved, your story tonight is no different. Where you have felt inadequate, insufficient, or powerless, God is now infusing you with strength that cannot be matched, that cannot be shaken, and that cannot fail. I want you to reflect deeply on the source of strength. Human strength is temporary. It tires, it falters, it runs out. But divine strength is eternal, inexhaustible, and unwavering. When you anchor yourself in God, you tap into a reservoir that never diminishes. When you surrender to Him, what seemed impossible becomes achievable. When you rely on His power, what once felt heavy becomes light. What once felt hopeless becomes full of promise. And what once seemed unattainable becomes a reality. Divine strength is not measured by your effort. It is measured by your faith, your surrender, and your willingness to allow God to work in and through you. Now consider the emotional aspect of silent weakness. Many of us have internalized struggles that we did not express, hiding our pain, our fear, our uncertainty, even from ourselves. And yet the Spirit of God is aware of every hidden struggle. God sees the battles you fight in the quiet of your mind, the doubts you whisper in the silence of your heart, and the fears you carry privately. He wants you to release them to Him. He wants to replace them with courage, resilience, and divine power. The battles you face internally are not yours to fight alone. They are opportunities for God's strength to manifest. And as you surrender these internal struggles, His power will flow through you, strengthening every weak place and empowering you to stand firm. I want to ask you tonight, what areas of silent weakness are holding you back from stepping fully into God's plan for your life? Is it fear, doubt, insecurity, or perhaps past failure? Take a moment and answer that question honestly in your heart. I want you to comment below with one area where you are releasing weakness and receiving divine strength. Your declaration activates the power of God and invites the Spirit to move, and it begins the process of transformation in your life. Beloved, your testimony of strength begins when you speak it, when you name it, and when you allow God to replace weakness with power. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a bird grounded by a broken wing, unable to soar into the sky. For years, it watches others fly freely, envying their freedom and strength. Then comes the healer, carefully mending the wing, restoring its capacity to fly. At first, the bird hesitates, unsure if it can trust its restored strength. But gradually, with each beat of its wings, it rises, soars higher than it ever imagined, and experiences the freedom that was always intended. Beloved, this is what God is doing in your life. He is mending the broken areas, restoring your strength, and preparing you to rise higher than you ever thought possible. Many of you have been living in a state of quiet resignation, believing that the circumstances around you define your power. Perhaps you have thought, I cannot change this. I cannot overcome that. I am too weak. But divine strength does not come from circumstances, it comes from God. And God is not limited by your past, your environment, or your perceived insufficiency. He is limitless, unstoppable, and unfailing. When you allow His strength to replace your weakness, you step into a new reality where limitations no longer define you, where fear no longer controls you, and where power flows freely through your spirit, equipping you to fulfill your purpose. I want to remind you of the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of divine strength. Physically, it restores energy where fatigue has taken hold. Mentally, it brings clarity where confusion and doubt have clouded your mind. Spiritually, it instills courage where fear and hesitation have resided. Divine strength is holistic. It reaches every part of your being and restores it to fullness. No longer will you operate from limitation, hesitation, or fear. Instead, you will operate from empowerment, clarity, and divine authority. I want to ask you another question tonight. In what area of your life do you feel the most inadequate? And are you willing to let God replace that inadequacy with His strength? Take a moment and reflect. Then comment below with your answer, knowing that your declaration is an invitation for God to move, an agreement with His Spirit, and a step toward empowerment. Your weakness does not have to remain silent any longer. Divine strength is ready to flow into that area to restore, renew, and equip you. Consider the spiritual practice of surrender. True replacement of weakness with divine strength requires surrender. It requires saying, Lord, I cannot do this alone. I release my limitations. I release my doubts. I release my fears. Fill me with your strength. Surrender is not weakness. It is an act of courage and faith. It is the acknowledgement that God's power is greater than any human limitation. And when you surrender, divine strength fills the spaces left by weakness, equipping you to walk in victory, peace, and confidence. I want to give you a final illustration tonight. Picture a well, deep and full of water. For years, it has been covered and unused while people nearby struggled to find water. Now imagine God lifting the cover, clearing the debris, and allowing the water to flow freely. That well represents the strength of God within you. The debris represents doubt, fear, and silent weakness. And as the debris is removed, the water flows, giving life, refreshing the spirit, and providing sustenance for every part of your being. Divine strength is already within you. It only requires your willingness to allow it to flow, to replace weakness, and to empower you to rise above every challenge. Beloved, your silent weakness has not defined you. It has only delayed your awareness of God's power. Tonight, God is calling you to release it, to surrender it, and to receive his divine strength. The strength that he provides is not temporary. It is not conditional. It is not dependent on human effort. It is supernatural, enduring, and available for every situation, every challenge, and every purpose he has called you to. Beloved, tonight I want to speak to the very essence of your soul. There is a truth that is too often overlooked, ignored, or compromised by the pressures and distractions of life. That truth is this: your joy is not something to be earned, it is not something to be borrowed, and it is not something to be postponed. Your joy is your divine birthright. It is an inheritance that was established before the foundations of the world. It is a gift given to you by God himself. And it is meant to be fully, freely, and abundantly yours. And tonight I want to declare over you that it is time to reclaim that joy fully, to allow it to permeate every area of your life, and to walk boldly in the freedom and fulfillment that comes from knowing that your joy is sacred, eternal, and unstoppable. Think for a moment about the seasons of your life when your joys seemed to vanish. Perhaps it was during times of hardship, disappointment, loss, or confusion. Perhaps it was when the weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon your shoulders, or when circumstances threatened to overwhelm you. Beloved, even in those moments, your joy was not lost. It was merely obscured. The enemy loves to convince you that joy is conditional, that it must be earned through success, achievement, or validation from others. But the Word of God reminds us that joy is not earned, it is given. It is a gift that flows from the heart of God, a reflection of his love, his faithfulness, and his eternal goodness. I want you to pause for a moment and reflect on this. Have you allowed life, circumstances, or other people to steal your joy? Have you postponed your happiness, thinking that someday, perhaps in the future, you will allow yourself to experience it? Beloved, that is not God's design. You were created to live in joy now, to walk in joy daily, and to operate from a place of joy in every circumstance. The restoration of your joy begins with a conscious decision to reclaim what is already yours. It begins with an acknowledgement that joy is not negotiable, it is not temporary, and it is not contingent on what the world provides. It is a divine birthright, and you are called to take hold of it fully. Consider the nature of joy itself. True joy is not merely happiness, which is fleeting and dependent on external conditions. True joy is deep, abiding, and rooted in the presence of God. It transcends circumstances, exists even in the midst of trials, challenges, and setbacks. It is a state of being, a spiritual posture, and a reflection of your alignment with the heart of God. When you reclaim your joy, you are not simply experiencing a fleeting emotion, you are entering into a life of divine fulfillment, spiritual resilience, and unshakable peace. Joy is the foundation of a life that walks in purpose, faith, and divine alignment. I want to ask you tonight, what areas of your life have you allowed to suppress your joy? Is it a past failure, a broken relationship, or an unmet expectation? Perhaps it is fear of the future, anxiety over circumstances, or comparison to others that has dimmed your joy. Whatever it is, God invites you now to release it into his hands. Hand over every worry, every disappointment, and every heavy burden. Allow him to fill those spaces with his presence, his peace, and his uncontainable joy. The moment you do, you create room for joy to flourish, to expand, and to saturate every corner of your heart. Beloved, I want you to visualize joy as a river flowing through your life. For years, that river may have been dammed by pain, disappointment, or fear. It may have been diverted by circumstances, criticism, or unhealed wounds. But tonight, God is removing every obstruction. He is breaking down every barrier. He is clearing the path so that the river of joy can flow freely, abundantly, and powerfully. Imagine the water moving through every dry place, washing away bitterness, cleansing every wound, and refreshing every weary part of your soul. That is the power of reclaiming your joy. It restores, revitalizes, and rejuvenates the very essence of who you are. Think about the promises of God that relate to joy. Psalm 16:11 says, "In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." This is not a temporary pleasure or a fleeting emotion. This is a fullness of joy, an abundance of divine delight that is available to you here and now. Beloved, you do not have to wait for circumstances to change, for people to act, or for conditions to be perfect. Your joy is present, accessible, and ready to be claimed. When you walk in the presence of God, joy becomes your default state, your spiritual inheritance, and your unshakable foundation. I want you to consider how reclaiming joy affects every area of your life. Your relationships are transformed when joy reigns in your heart. Your work becomes purposeful and inspired when joy guides your actions. Your health, your creativity, and your ability to navigate challenges all improve when you operate from a place of joy. Joy is not just an emotion, it is an energizing force, a spiritual lens through which you perceive life, and a reflection of God's presence within you. When you reclaim it fully, you are stepping into the life that God designed for you, a life of abundance, peace, and fulfillment. Beloved, there may have been seasons when you tried to find joy in the wrong places. Perhaps you sought it in achievements, recognition, possessions, or approval from others. While these things may offer temporary pleasure, they cannot provide the lasting joy that God has placed in your spirit. True joy comes from alignment with Him, from trusting His plan, from living in obedience to His word, and from embracing the gifts He has given you. It is not dependent on what happens around you. It is anchored in who He is. And it is available to you right now. I want to ask you tonight, where have you been compromising your joy for temporary satisfaction? Are there areas in your life where you have settled for less than the fullness God intends? I want you to reflect and then share in the comments one area where you are choosing to reclaim your joy fully. This is an act of declaration, an affirmation of faith, and an invitation for God's Spirit to move in your life in a powerful way. And by speaking it, you activate the power of God to restore, revive, and renew every part of your soul that has been withheld from joy. Consider the story of the prodigal son. Though he wandered, struggled, and faced emptiness, the moment he returned to the Father, he was embraced, restored, and celebrated. Joy was restored immediately, not because of what he had done, but because of the heart of the Father. Beloved, your story is no different. No matter the mistakes, the failures, or the lost seasons, God's joy is waiting for you. It is not withheld, it is not earned, it is yours by divine design. All you must do is reclaim it, welcome it, and allow it to fill every part of your being. Think about the spiritual practices that invite joy into your life. Gratitude is one of the most powerful tools. When you focus on what you have rather than what is missing, when you reflect on God's faithfulness and provision, joy naturally rises. Worship is another powerful practice. When you lift your heart in praise, when you speak his goodness aloud, when you meditate on his promises, joy flows freely. Prayer, surrender, and obedience also invite joy to saturate your spirit. Each of these practices aligns your heart with God's presence and allows the fullness of joy to take root, expand, and flourish. Beloved, I want you to visualize the joy you are reclaiming as a light within your soul. Perhaps it has been dimmed, hidden, or overshadowed by challenges. Tonight, see it shining brightly once again. Watch it illuminate every dark corner, dispel fear, and renew hope. Let it flow through your thoughts, your emotions, your words, and your actions. Allow it to impact your relationships, your work, and your environment. Reclaimed joy is transformative. It changes how you perceive life, how you respond to challenges, and how you engage with the world. It is not passive. It is active, alive, and life-giving. I want to ask you one more reflective question. What is one area of your life where you have been withholding joy, and what step will you take today to reclaim it fully? Comment below with your answer, because your declaration activates faith, invites God's presence, and sets into motion the restoration of your soul. Beloved, joy is not a luxury. It is your divine inheritance. It is not optional. It is essential. It is not temporary. It is eternal. And tonight, as you choose to reclaim it, you are stepping into a life of fullness, abundance, and divine delight that has always been intended for you. Think about the ripple effect of joy. When your heart is full, when your soul is alive with God's presence, it influences everyone around you. Your family feels the peace. Your friends feel the encouragement. Your community feels the light. Joy is contagious. And when you reclaim it fully, you are not only walking in your inheritance, you are becoming a vessel of God's love, his power, and his blessing. Every smile, every word, every action can reflect the joy of God in your life. Beloved, tonight I want you to make a declaration over yourself. Say, I reclaim my joy fully. I receive the fullness of God's delight in my life. I will not allow circumstances, people, or the past to steal my joy. It is mine by divine right. I will walk in it daily, freely, abundantly, and powerfully. Speak it aloud. Declare it over your heart. Affirm it with confidence, because God honors those who take hold of their inheritance, who step into the fullness of his promises, and who refuse to allow anything to diminish what he has given. I want you to picture your life moving forward from this moment. Every day you wake with joy in your heart. Every challenge you face is met with strength, peace, and the confidence that God's presence is with you. Every relationship, every responsibility, every opportunity is infused with the energy and light of joy. You walk in freedom, fully aware that joy is not something you chase. It is something that flows from within because God has placed it there, and you have chosen to reclaim it fully. Beloved, as we come to the close of this time together, I want you to pause and reflect on what God has spoken to your heart today. Every word, every declaration, every moment of reflection has been an invitation for you to step into a deeper place of freedom, healing, and joy. You are not the same as when you began this session. Something has shifted, something has been stirred, and the Spirit of God has been moving in you, preparing you for a new season of breakthrough and restoration. I want to remind you that the healing, the strength, and the joy that you are reclaiming are not temporary or fleeting. They are rooted in the unchanging presence of God. They are anchored in his word, empowered by his Spirit, and guaranteed by his promises. What has been hidden, what has been broken, and what has been dormant in your heart is now being awakened, restored, and strengthened. You are stepping into your destiny with renewed courage and renewed purpose. Beloved, every prayer you have prayed today, every truth you have spoken over your life has created a shift in your spiritual atmosphere. Your faith, your words, and your declarations are powerful, and God has heard them. He is moving on your behalf. He is orchestrating circumstances, opening doors, and aligning resources in your favor. Nothing is too difficult for him, and nothing you are facing is beyond his ability to turn around. I encourage you to carry this momentum into every area of your life. Let the truths you have embraced today guide your thoughts, shape your decisions, and influence your actions. Walk in confidence, knowing that the God who has begun a good work in you will complete it. Do not allow fear, doubt, or past disappointments to pull you back. Your future is bright, your steps are ordered, and your life is designed for victory. Beloved, take a moment to celebrate even the small shifts that are happening within you. Perhaps you feel lighter. Perhaps you feel a new sense of hope. Perhaps you sense a stirring of joy and strength you haven't felt in a long time. Recognize these moments as signs of God's activity. Honor them. Speak them out loud. Declare them boldly. This is the beginning of a new chapter, a fresh season of fulfillment, and a deeper experience of his love. I want to encourage you to remain consistent in your spiritual practices. Pray daily, meditate on God's word, declare his truths over your life, and remain steadfast in faith. These are not just activities, they are lifelines that connect you to the source of your strength, healing, and joy. As you remain faithful, God will continue to work in ways that exceed your expectations and defy limitations. Beloved, your life is a testimony in the making. Every breakthrough, every healing, every joy restored will be a living example of God's faithfulness. Share your experiences, encourage others, and allow your story to inspire hope and courage in those around you. You were created to be a light, to reflect God's goodness, and to carry his presence wherever you go. Your testimony has the power to impact generations. As we close, I want you to affirm what you have received today. Speak it boldly, declare it confidently. I am healed. I am strengthened. I am joyful. I am restored. I am walking in the fullness of God's purpose and power. Do not underestimate the power of your words. What you declare aligns with heaven and activates transformation in your life. I invite you now to engage with this community of faith. Like this video, subscribe to the channel for daily prayer, and write Amen in the comments. Share one thing you are believing God for today. Your declaration not only strengthens your faith, but encourages others to rise, believe, and receive their breakthrough. Together, we are a force of prayer, hope, and transformation. Finally, beloved, go forth with the confidence that God is with you. He has not abandoned you. He has not forgotten you. He is actively working in your life to heal, restore, and renew. Carry his presence with you. Let his joy overflow and walk boldly into the life he has prepared for you. Remember, you are loved, you are chosen, and your best days are ahead. People of God, we have arrived at the threshold of transition. We are standing at the edge of a calendar, at the edge of a season, at the edge of a divine turning point. January is not ending by accident. It is concluding by divine permission. And whenever God allows an ending, it is because he has already authorized a beginning. Tonight, heaven is attentive. Angels are on assignment, and spiritual doors are responding to the authority of your voice. This is not just the end of a month. This is the closing of cycles, the expiration of delays, and the termination of everything that tried to follow you into 2026 without permission. I need you to understand something very clearly. What you don't release, you risk repeating. What you tolerate, you empower. And what you refuse to confront will attempt to collect rent in your next season. But tonight, by prophetic alignment, we are issuing eviction notices in the spirit. Every weight, every failure, every disappointment, every unanswered question, every tear shed in silence, you are not crossing over with it. This is a moment of separation between what was and what will be. separation between who you were and who God is calling you to become. Hear me. This is not a casual prayer, and this is not a religious routine. This is a strategic moment of alignment. January was the womb, but February is the birthing room. And before anything is birthed, something must be pushed out. Tonight, you are releasing old mindsets, expired relationships, past mistakes, missed opportunities, and seasons that have outlived their assignment. You are making room for clarity, room for acceleration, room for favor, room for instruction, room for divine surprises that cannot manifest in a cluttered spiritual environment. If this word is already stirring your spirit, I want you to act in faith right now. Like the video and subscribe to this channel for daily prayers that keep you spiritually aligned and prophetically positioned. This is not about algorithms. This is about agreement. When you connect, you stay covered, you stay consistent, and you stay ready. And don't be silent. Type amen in the comments as a declaration that this prayer is active and working on your behalf. And before we go any further, I want you to do one more thing. Comment one thing you are believing God for today. Say it, name it, declare it. Because what you speak in faith becomes a legal transaction in the spirit. This is your moment. This is your release. This is your preparation. And tonight we are not stepping forward empty. We are stepping forward empowered, aligned, and authorized for a brand new season. Beloved, this moment has been appointed for release, not because time demands it, but because heaven authorizes it. There are things you carried into this month that were never meant to follow you beyond it. Not every burden you picked up was yours to keep. Not every weight you learned to manage was yours to master. And not every cycle you survived was meant to be repeated. Some things stayed because you were strong enough to carry them, not because they were assigned to remain. Strength kept you standing, but wisdom now calls you to let go. Tonight is not about regret, it is about readiness. Readiness requires release, and release requires recognition. Recognition that some patterns only persist because they were never confronted. Some cycles only repeat because they were never renamed. And some baggage only follows because it was never given permission to leave. There are spiritual suitcases packed in your soul that were filled during seasons of survival. You packed them when you were trying to make it through disappointment, through betrayal, through confusion, through delay, through unanswered prayers. You packed fear because you needed protection. You packed control because you needed certainty. You packed silence because your voice was ignored. You packed overthinking because clarity felt unsafe. But survival strategies are not destiny tools. What kept you alive in one season can suffocate you in the next. God never intended for coping mechanisms to become permanent residences. Tonight we acknowledge what once served a purpose but no longer serves a future. Cycles are subtle. They disguise themselves as familiarity. They convince you that because something is known, it is safe. But familiarity is not freedom. Repetition is not progress. Some cycles feel spiritual because they involve prayer, effort, patience, and endurance, but they are not producing movement. You pray, you wait, you try again, and end up in the same emotional place, the same mental exhaustion, the same spiritual frustration. That is not discipline, that is delay masquerading as faith. And tonight we expose cycles that no longer carry divine permission. Anything that God has already taught you through, you are not required to keep relearning. Patterns are agreements. They are behaviors, responses, and reactions that were formed through experience and reinforced through repetition. Patterns don't begin as rebellion. They begin as protection. You learned how to respond to disappointment by withdrawing. You learned how to respond to conflict by over-explaining. You learned how to respond to uncertainty by rushing decisions. You learned how to respond to waiting by settling. These patterns were born in moments when you needed something to hold you together, but now they are holding you back. God is not asking you to be ashamed of the pattern. He is asking you to break agreement with it. Spiritual baggage is not always visible. It doesn't always look like sin or rebellion. Sometimes it looks like excessive responsibility, emotional fatigue, unprocessed grief, deferred dreams, muted expectations, guarded prayers. It looks like praying safe prayers because bold ones hurt too much when they go unanswered. It looks like lowering hope to protect the heart. It looks like staying busy so you don't have to feel. But heaven is not impressed by how much you carry. Heaven responds to how much you surrender. God never asks you to manage what he intended to remove. Some baggage came through words spoken over you in moments when you were vulnerable, words that labeled you before you knew yourself, words that framed your future through someone else's frustration, words that defined your limits before God revealed your capacity. You didn't challenge them because you were young or tired or unsure or just trying to survive. But words unchallenged become beliefs, and beliefs unexamined become boundaries. Tonight, we remove labels that were never authored by God. We return words to their senders. We release definitions that did not come from heaven. There are cycles connected to environments you stayed in longer than necessary because you confused endurance with obedience. You stayed because you thought leaving meant failure. You stayed because you hoped things would change if you just tried harder. You stayed because walking away felt like quitting. But sometimes staying is disobedience dressed as loyalty. God never asked you to remain in spaces that drain your oil while demanding your light. When a season expires, grace lifts. What once felt manageable becomes heavy. What once flowed now resists. That is not punishment. That is instruction. Least requires trust. Trust that what God has ahead of you is not dependent on what you are willing to drag with you. Trust that God can close doors without you holding on to the handle. Trust that you don't need to understand every ending for it to be legitimate. Some endings do not come with explanation. They come with peace. Others come with grief before clarity. Both are holy. God is not offended by your tears during transition. He is attentive to them, but he will not allow your tears to anchor you to what he is calling you out of. There are patterns of thinking that must be released, thoughts that loop endlessly without resolution, questions that replay without answers, mental rehearsals of conversations that already happened, scenarios that never occurred, but still exhausted you. Overthinking is not discernment. It is fear searching for control. God is not asking you to silence your mind through force, but to surrender it through trust. Peace is not the absence of questions. It is the presence of confidence in God's character. Tonight, we release the need to mentally revisit what God has already decided. Cycles of delay often attach themselves to identity. You begin to see yourself as the one who always waits, always struggles, always starts over, always rebuilds. That identity becomes familiar, even comfortable, because it gives meaning to pain. But God is not glorified by how much you endure if endurance becomes your ceiling. He is glorified when endurance produces transformation. You are not the one who almost makes it. You are not the one who just survives. You are not the one who is always catching up. Those narratives end tonight. Releasing old cycles means forgiving versions of yourself that did the best they could with what they knew. Some baggage is self-condemnation carried quietly. You replay mistakes and wish you had chosen differently, spoken sooner, waited longer, trusted more, feared less. But regret is a poor teacher when it is not paired with grace. God does not heal you by shaming you into better decisions. He heals you by restoring your confidence to choose again without fear. Tonight, you forgive yourself for what you did not know when you did not know it. There are cycles connected to relationships that taught you how to survive instead of how to thrive. Connections that required constant explanation, constant adjustment, constant self-adjustment. You learned how to minimize your needs to maintain peace. You learned how to silence your intuition to keep harmony. But peace that cost you truth is not peace. It is postponement of conflict. God is not asking you to carry relational baggage into a season that requires clarity and alignment. Some connections cannot go where God is taking you because they are attached to versions of you that no longer exist. Patterns can also be spiritualized. Stagnation, waiting without listening, praying without positioning, fasting without forgiveness, declaring without obedience. God is not impressed by motion without movement. If a cycle keeps you busy but not fruitful, active but not advancing, disciplined but not directed, it must be questioned. Heaven responds to alignment, not exhaustion. Tonight, we release religious habits that replace relationship, routines that replace responsiveness, and effort that replace intimacy. Letting go is not weakness, it is discernment. It is the ability to recognize when something has fulfilled its assignment. Even manna expired, even familiar provision was not meant to be permanent. God changes methods without changing purpose. If you cling to old methods, you may miss new movement. Releasing cycles is not denying what God did before. It is honoring it by allowing him to do something new. You don't dishonor the past by refusing to live in it. There is a calm authority in this release, not emotional force, not dramatic declarations, but settled confidence. Confidence that God does not recycle seasons unnecessarily. Confidence that when something ends, it ends with intention. Confidence that what leaves creates space for what is coming. Space is holy. Space allows breath. Space allows clarity. Space allows instruction. Tonight, we clear space in the spirit, in the mind, in the heart. Baggage often feels heavy because it contains unresolved emotions. Emotions delayed do not disappear, they accumulate. Unspoken grief, unacknowledged anger, deferred joy, postponed celebration. God is not asking you to ignore what you felt. He is asking you to release it from authority over your future. Feelings are real, but they are not rulers. They are indicators, not dictators. Tonight, emotions are acknowledged, honored, and released from governance. There are cycles connected to timing. You believed something would happen sooner, differently, easier. When it didn't, disappointment settled quietly and rewrote expectations. You stopped anticipating. You stopped celebrating early. You stopped dreaming freely. But delay does not equal denial. Timing does not define worth. God's calendar is not behind. He does not rush to meet pressure. He moves according to purpose. Releasing old timelines allows you to trust divine ones. As this release happens, there is a gentleness to it. You are not ripping things away. You are laying them down. You are not forcing closure. You are accepting it. Acceptance is powerful. Acceptance says, this no longer controls me. Acceptance says, this no longer defines me. Acceptance says, I am free to move forward without dragging evidence of where I have been. And as you release, peace begins to replace pressure. Cycles break when agreement ends. Patterns dissolve when participation stops. Baggage loses weight when it is set down. Tonight, you are not negotiating with the past. You are disengaging from it. You are not arguing with what was. You are aligning with what is. God stands ready to move you forward, but he will not override your hands if they are full. Release makes room for reception. Beloved, as this month draws to its final breath, understand that closure is not passive, it is prophetic. You do not drift out of a season, you exit it with intention. The end of a month is not simply a date on a calendar, it is a spiritual checkpoint, a moment when heaven pauses to observe what you are carrying forward and what you are willing to lay down. Closing the month with authority means you refuse to let time decide for you what only discernment should determine. You are not allowing January to close you. You are closing January. You are not being pushed into a new season. You are stepping into it with awareness, alignment, and spiritual intelligence. Alignment is not emotional excitement. It is inner agreement. It is the quiet settling of the soul when the spirit comes into harmony with divine timing. Many people rush into new seasons without alignment and spend months trying to correct what should have been calibrated at the threshold. But tonight, you are not rushing. You are aligning. Alignment says, my thoughts are adjusting to truth. My expectations are recalibrating to purpose. My pace is surrendering to wisdom. Alignment is the removal of internal resistance. When alignment happens, confusion loses its voice, anxiety loses its grip, and urgency loses its power to rush you ahead of God. To close a month with authority, you must recognize that authority is exercised through intention, not volume. You do not need to shout to be powerful. You do not need to force to be effective. Spiritual authority flows from clarity, clarity about who you are, where you are, and what season you are in. Tonight, clarity replaces emotional fog. You are not guessing your way forward. You are not hoping blindly. You are discerning accurately. Authority speaks calmly because it knows it is heard. Intentional alignment requires awareness of what this month produced in you, not just what happened to you. Some months are not about visible breakthroughs. They are about internal rearrangements. January may not have given you everything you asked for, but it refined how you ask. It sharpened how you listen. It exposed what distracts you. It revealed what drains you. It showed you where you overextended and where you underbelieved. That awareness is fruit, and fruit must be acknowledged before it can be carried forward. When you close a month intentionally, you close open spiritual tabs. You settle unresolved emotions. You acknowledge lessons learned without reliving the pain that taught them. You harvest wisdom without re-entering the struggle. Many people carry months unfinished, emotionally open-ended, spiritually unresolved. That is why new seasons feel heavy before they begin. But tonight, you are finishing well. You are not dragging questions into February. You are not carrying resentment into tomorrow. You are not bringing self-doubt into your next assignment. Alignment also means recognizing what God emphasized and what he ignored. Sometimes we focus on what didn't move while God was focused on what was shifting quietly beneath the surface. While you were watching doors that stayed closed, God was strengthening your discernment. While you were monitoring timelines, God was stabilizing your character. While you were measuring progress externally, God was establishing authority internally. When you align with God's emphasis, frustration dissolves because you realize nothing was wasted. There is authority in reflection without regret. You are allowed to look back without longing to return. Reflection says, I see clearly now. Regret says, I wish I could go back. But authority never looks backward with desire. Authority looks back with understanding. Understanding produces peace. Peace confirms alignment. Tonight, you are not wishing January was different. You are extracting what January gave you and releasing the rest. Closing the month with authority also means setting spiritual boundaries. Boundaries around what you will carry emotionally. Boundaries around what you will entertain mentally. Boundaries around what you will tolerate spiritually. Authority does not explain boundaries, it establishes them. You do not need permission to protect your peace. You do not need approval to guard your focus. You do not need consensus to obey God. Alignment gives you confidence to choose clarity over chaos. Intentional alignment recalibrates expectations. You stop demanding that God move according to pressure, and you start trusting that he moves according to purpose. Pressure produces anxiety, purpose produces peace. When alignment happens, impatience quiets. You no longer measure progress by speed alone, but by accuracy. You would rather arrive prepared than arrive early. Authority understands timing. Authority respects process. Authority does not rush harvest before roots are strong. As the month closes, alignment requires honesty. Honest acknowledgement of fatigue without guilt. Honest recognition of disappointment without shame. Honest admission of fear without surrendering to it. God does not require performance at the threshold of a new season. He requires presence. Presence allows him to adjust you. Pretending blocks alignment. Honesty invites healing. Tonight, honesty becomes alignment, and alignment becomes authority. There are moments when alignment feels like stillness, not because nothing is happening, but because everything unnecessary is settling. Stillness is not stagnation when it is directed by God. It is recalibration. It is God fine-tuning your hearing. It is God steadying your footing. It is God quieting the noise so instruction can land. Closing the month in stillness is not weakness, it is wisdom. Authority also comes from recognizing where God protected you by withholding. Some doors did not open because they were misaligned with your future. Some prayers were delayed because the timing would have cost you peace. Some opportunities passed because they would have demanded compromise. Alignment allows you to thank God not only for what happened, but for what didn't. Gratitude seals authority. Gratitude confirms trust. As alignment deepens, you become less reactive. You stop responding to every trigger. You stop explaining every decision. You stop defending every boundary. Authority does not argue, authority stands. When alignment settles, emotional reactivity loses influence. You are no longer pulled by urgency, comparison, or external pressure. You move from response to discernment, from reaction to intention. Closing the month intentionally also involves releasing spiritual residue from conversations that drained you, residue from news that unsettled you, residue from expectations that disappointed you, residue from environments that demanded too much. Residue accumulates quietly, and if not released, it dulls sensitivity. Tonight, residue is washed away, not through striving, but through surrender. Alignment restores sensitivity. There is a gentle authority that emerges when you stop trying to control outcomes and start stewarding obedience. Control is exhausting. Stewardship is peaceful. Alignment shifts you from outcome figure living to obedience-centered living. You no longer measure success by what you see immediately, but by whether you followed instruction accurately. That shift brings rest. Rest sharpens authority. Intentional alignment also positions you to receive instruction for the next season. God does not reveal next steps to minds cluttered with unfinished business. He speaks clearly when space is made. Closing the month with intention creates space. Space in the mind, space in the heart, space in expectations. Space allows clarity to land without resistance. Authority flows through clarity. There's nothing rushed about this moment, nothing frantic, nothing pressured. It is calm because it is aligned, calm because it is deliberate, calm because it is covered. You are not trying to fix everything before the month ends. You are simply bringing yourself into agreement with truth. Agreement produces authority, authority produces peace. As alignment continues, you may notice a shift in your language. Less complaining, more clarity. Less explaining, more conviction. Less questioning, more listening. Language reveals alignment. When alignment shifts, speech follows. Authority speaks differently. It does not overpromise. It does not exaggerate. It does not beg. It declares quietly because it trusts deeply. Closing the month with authority also means recognizing that God is not behind. Nothing is late. Nothing is missed. Nothing is lost. Alignment corrects false urgency. You stop racing imaginary deadlines. You stop comparing invisible timelines. You stop punishing yourself for not being where someone else appears to be. Authority knows its own pace. This alignment is not dramatic, but it is decisive. It is the quiet click of something locking into place. The internal knowing that something has settled, the sense that you are no longer scattered, that your thoughts are quieter, that your spirit is steadier, that your emotions are no longer leading, that you are positioned, not because everything is clear, but because you are aligned enough to move when instructed. As the month closes, you are not demanding answers. You are trusting direction. Direction is often revealed step by step, not all at once. Alignment accepts that. Authority is patient. Authority does not panic in uncertainty. Authority rests in relationship. Relationship sustains you when clarity unfolds gradually. This moment is not about celebration or sorrow. It is about calibration. Calibration ensures accuracy. Accuracy ensures effectiveness. Effectiveness ensures fruit. Fruit comes in season. Alignment positions you for seasonality. You are not forcing harvest in winter. You are preparing soil with intention. As you stand at the edge of transition, there is a quiet readiness forming, not excitement fueled by hype, but confidence anchored in trust. Not anticipation driven by pressure, but expectation rooted in peace. Authority does not rush forward. Authority stands ready. Alignment holds you steady. This closing is clean, not messy, not chaotic. Clean, clean hands, clear mind, quiet spirit, settled heart. You are not carrying unresolved arguments, unspoken bitterness, unfinished grief. You are laying things down gently. Authority does not throw things away. It releases them intentionally. Beloved, there comes a moment when heaven waits for your agreement more than your effort. There are battles that do not end because they are fought harder, but because they are released wiser. Tonight is about breaking agreements you never meant to sign. Agreements formed in moments of exhaustion, fear, disappointment, and survival. Agreements with delay that whispered later so often it sounded like wisdom. Agreements with fear that dressed itself as caution and called itself discernment. Agreements with disappointment that told you to lower your expectations so your heart would not hurt again. These agreements were not signed with ink, but with repetition, with tolerance, with silence, with staying when your spirit was signaling it was time to move. Delay is not always imposed, sometimes it is permitted. Permitted when fear convinces you to hesitate even after instruction is clear. Permitted when disappointment convinces you that waiting is safer than trusting again. Permitted when past pain becomes a reference point stronger than present truth. Delay does not always shout off, and it speaks softly, patiently, reassuringly. It tells you there is no rush, no urgency, no need to move now. But discern this: divine timing never paralyzes. It prepares. Fear paralyzes. And tonight, the distinction becomes clear. What God is asking you to break is not patience, but postponement disguised as wisdom. Fear is persuasive because it promises protection. It tells you that caution will keep you safe, that silence will keep you unseen, that hesitation will keep you from repeating pain. But fear never protects, it only delays exposure to growth. Fear does not guard destiny, it negotiates with it. Every time fear speaks and you obey, an agreement is reinforced. And over time, fear stops sounding like fear and starts sounding like your own voice. Tonight, you reclaim your voice. Not the voice shaped by what happened to you, but the voice aligned with what God said about you. Disappointment is heavier because it feels justified. It comes with evidence. It brings memories, timelines, expectations unmet. It reminds you of prayers that seemed unanswered, efforts that felt wasted, trust that was not honored. Disappointment tells you that hope must be managed carefully, rationed slowly, guarded fiercely. But disappointment only has power when it becomes instruction. Feeling disappointed is human. Letting disappointment dictate your future's agreement. Tonight, you separate the emotion from the authority you gave it. Breaking agreements is not confrontation, it is clarity. You are not fighting fear, you are disengaging from it. You are not arguing with delay, you are stepping out of alignment with it. You are not suppressing disappointment, you are releasing its influence. Release does not require anger, it requires decision. And decision is quiet, settled, intentional. Decision says this no longer governs my choices. Decision says this no longer frames my expectations. Decision says this no longer has permission to advise me. Some agreements were formed because you were tired of trying, tired of believing, tired of being strong. In those moments, delay felt merciful, fear felt reasonable, disappointment felt honest. But seasons change, and what once felt necessary becomes restrictive. God is not offended by the agreements you made while surviving. He is inviting you to revise them now that you are ready to move forward. Revision is grace. Revision is wisdom. Revision is alignment. Fear often attaches itself to the unknown. It tells you that what you cannot predict cannot be trusted. But faith does not require prediction. It requires obedience. You do not need to see the whole path to take the next step. Delay demands certainty. Faith responds to instruction. Tonight, you break the agreement that says you must feel fully confident before you move. Confidence often follows obedience, not precedes it. Disappointment often creates internal vows, quiet promises you make to yourself like, I will not expect too much again. I will not open my heart again. I will not risk disappointment again. These vows feel protective, but they quietly restrict capacity. Capacity for joy, capacity for connection, capacity for possibility. God does not heal disappointment by shrinking your expectations. He heals it by restoring your courage. Tonight, courage returns gently, without pressure, without force. Breaking agreements also means recognizing how delay can become identity. You start seeing yourself as the one who waits, the one who almost, the one who is always preparing but never stepping. That identity feels familiar, even safe, because it removes the risk of failure, but it also removes the possibility of fulfillment. God did not design you to live perpetually in preparation. Preparation serves movement. Movement honors preparation. Tonight, the identity of perpetual waiting loosens its grip. Fear thrives on imagination without truth. It paints pictures of everything that could go wrong and presents them as certainty, but fear never shows you what could go right. It never imagines grace, provision, favor, or support. It selectively edits the future to justify inaction. Breaking agreement with fear means refusing to let imagined outcomes override divine instruction. Instruction is louder than imagination when you listen. Disappointment often speaks in absolutes. It tells you things like, it will always be this way. Nothing ever changes. This is how it ends. But absolutes belong to God, not to circumstances. No season has the authority to define your future. No moment has the right to become a conclusion. Breaking agreement with disappointment means refusing to let a chapter write the ending. You are allowed to turn the page without understanding every line you just read. There is a calm authority in choosing to move again, not rushing, not forcing, not proving, just moving. Movement breaks stagnation. Movement disrupts delay. Movement weakens fear. Movement reminds disappointment that it is not in control. Even small movement carries spiritual weight. A decision made quietly in alignment with God carries more authority than loud declarations made without obedience. Breaking agreements does not mean you will never feel fear again. It means fear no longer decides. It does not mean you will never feel disappointed again. It means disappointment no longer directs. It does not mean delays will never occur. It means delay will not be self-imposed. There is a difference between encountering resistance and agreeing with it. Tonight, agreement ends. Some agreements were reinforced by other people's opinions, voices that question your readiness, minimize your progress, or projected their own fear onto your future. You listened because you trusted them or because you doubted yourself. But external voices are not authority unless you invite them to be. God's voice does not compete, it confirms. Tonight you release the need to seek validation before obedience. Breaking agreements also means forgiving yourself for moments when fear stopped you, when delay felt easier, when disappointment shaped your choices. Self-blame is another form of agreement that keeps you stuck. God is not asking you to punish yourself into progress. He is inviting you to step forward with compassion for the version of you that needed compassion. Compassion accelerates healing. Shame delays it. There is a rhythm to faith that fear disrupts. Fear rushes or freezes. Faith listens. Disappointment dulls hearing. Delay numbs urgency. Tonight, rhythm is restored. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not disqualified. You are simply choosing again. This time without fear at the table, without delay holding the pen, without disappointment framing the outcome. Breaking agreements requires stillness. Stillness allows you to hear what has been influencing you quietly. In stillness, you recognize which thoughts are repetitive, which hesitations are habitual, which doubts are familiar. Familiar does not mean true. Familiar does not mean permanent. Familiar only means repeated, and repetition can be interrupted. God's agreements break. You may feel lighter, but also exposed. Fear once gave the illusion of safety. Delay once gave the illusion of control. Disappointment once gave the illusion of realism. Letting go of illusions can feel unsettling at first, but God does not leave you exposed. He covers you with clarity. Clarity is safer than illusion. You are not being pushed into reckless action. You are being invited into responsive obedience, obedience that listens, obedience that discerns, obedience that moves when instructed and rests when required. Fear rushes to escape discomfort. Faith moves in peace. Tonight, peace becomes your signal. Breaking agreements also means adjusting how you interpret resistance. Resistance does not always mean stop. Sometimes it means strengthen. Sometimes it means refine. Sometimes it means proceed differently. Delay told you resistance meant retreat. Fear told you resistance meant danger. But God often uses resistance to develop endurance and discernment, not to cancel assignment. Disappointment often tries to protect you from future pain by lowering your reach. But God heals disappointment by lifting your vision. Vision does not deny reality, it reinterprets it. Vision says, this hurt did not end me. This delay did not define me. This fear did not defeat me. Tonight, vision gently rises again. There is no urgency in this release, only clarity. No pressure, only permission. Permission to move without fear, permission to hope without apology, permission to try again without rehearsing past failure, permission to trust God without needing guarantees, permission to break agreements quietly, firmly, completely. Agreements dissolve. You may notice your posture changing, shoulders relaxing, breath deepening, thoughts slowing. That is alignment returning. That is authority settling. Authority does not arrive with noise. It arrives with peace. Beloved, preparation is not pressure, it is positioning. God never rushes what he intends to sustain. When he speaks of a new season, he is not speaking of speed, but of alignment. Acceleration is not chaos, it is clarity multiplied by obedience. Tonight, preparation begins quietly, not with urgency, but with intentional readiness of the spirit, the mind, and the atmosphere around you. You are not preparing because something is wrong. You are preparing because something new requires capacity. Capacity is expanded before movement begins. The spirit prepares first because the spirit leads. Before your circumstances shift, your discernment must sharpen. Before doors open, your hearing must clear. Preparation in the spirit means tuning your inner ear to recognize divine timing without confusion. It means learning to distinguish between God's instruction and emotional impulse. Many miss acceleration not because they are unwilling, but because they are misaligned. Alignment begins in the spirit when trust replaces striving and peace replaces pressure. Spiritual preparation is also about consecration, not separation from the world, but separation from distraction. Distraction dulls discernment. Noise blurs instruction. God does not shout over chaos. He waits for stillness. Preparing the spirit means choosing quiet over constant input, presence over performance, listening over reacting. Stillness does not slow progress. It refines direction. Direction refined accelerates movement. The mind prepares next because the mind interprets instruction. A cluttered mind cannot move quickly with accuracy. Acceleration requires clarity, not confusion. Preparation of the mind involves releasing mental resistance, unlearning limiting narratives, and allowing truth to recalibrate thought patterns. You cannot move forward efficiently while arguing internally with where God is leading you. Agreement in the mind creates momentum in the spirit. Many delays are mental, not spiritual. Thoughts like, I am not ready yet. I need more confirmation. What if it doesn't work? What if I fail again? These are not discernment questions. They are fear-based hesitations. Preparing the mind means gently challenging these thoughts without force. It means replacing overanalysis with trust, replacing self-doubt with obedience, replacing mental noise with quiet confidence. Confidence grows in prepared minds. Preparation of the mind also includes renewing expectations. Old expectations can sabotage new seasons. You cannot expect God to move the same way he did before if the season has changed. Flexibility is a sign of readiness. A prepared mind is open, not rigid. It listens without assuming. It learns without defending. It adapts without fear. Acceleration flows through adaptability. As the spirit and mind align, the atmosphere must be addressed. Atmosphere influences behavior more than intention. You can have strong desire and clear instruction, but if the atmosphere is heavy, movement will feel forced. Preparing the atmosphere means removing what drains you, disrupts peace, and distorts focus. It is not about controlling everything. It is about curating what surrounds you. Atmosphere includes conversations you allow, media you consume, environments you linger in, and relationships that influence your energy. Acceleration requires environments that support obedience, not exhaust it. God does not ask you to run while surrounded by resistance. He prepares space for movement. Sometimes the preparation God asks for is simply stepping away from environments that confuse your spirit. Preparing the atmosphere also means speaking alignment into your space. Not loud declarations, but consistent truth. Truth spoken calmly carries authority. When you speak peace, clarity, readiness, and trust into your environment, resistance weakens. Atmosphere responds to consistency more than intensity. Quiet consistency shifts spiritual climate. Quiet consistency shifts spiritual climate. Acceleration does not mean everything happens at once. It means movement happens without unnecessary resistance. When preparation is complete, steps feel lighter, decisions feel clearer, obedience feels natural instead of forced. Acceleration feels smooth because alignment removes friction. Preparing for a new season also requires emotional readiness. Emotions do not lead, but they must be acknowledged. Unprocessed emotions slow movement because they surface at the wrong moments. Preparation includes allowing emotions to settle without judgment. You are not suppressing feelings, you are stewarding them. Emotional maturity accelerates progress because it prevents derailment. Fear slows acceleration when it is ignored, not when it is acknowledged. A prepared heart does not deny fear, it refuses to be ruled by it. Fear acknowledged loses power. Fear denied grows louder. Preparation involves honesty without surrender. Honesty creates space for courage to rise naturally. Preparation also includes releasing urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. Peace creates precision. God moves quickly without rushing. He accelerates outcomes, not anxiety. When urgency is released, obedience becomes accurate. Accurate obedience shortens journeys. Many detours come from rushed decisions, not from delayed ones. The Spirit prepares through alignment with God's rhythm. God's rhythm includes rest, reflection, instruction, movement. When you move out of rhythm, exhaustion follows. Preparation restores rhythm. Rhythm creates sustainability. Sustainability allows acceleration without burnout. A prepared spirit listens more than it speaks. It observes more than it reacts. It waits without anxiety and moves without hesitation. This balance is not learned overnight. It is cultivated through trust. Trust deepens in preparation. As preparation continues, you may notice an increase in sensitivity. Sensitivity is not weakness, it is discernment. You notice what feels heavy sooner. You recognize misalignment quicker. You sense instruction earlier. Sensitivity shortens response time. Shortened response time accelerates progress. Preparation of the mind includes releasing comparison. Comparison distorts pace. You are not behind because someone else moved sooner. You are not late because someone else finished faster. Acceleration is personal. God accelerates individuals differently based on assignment, capacity, and timing. A prepared mind stays focused on its own instruction. Preparing the atmosphere may involve silence. Silence creates space for clarity. Silence removes unnecessary input. Silence allows the spirit to recalibrate. Silence is not emptiness, it is openness. Openness invites instruction. Acceleration often begins with small, obedient steps that feel insignificant. Preparation teaches you not to despise small movement. Small movement aligned with God carries momentum. Momentum builds quietly. Quiet momentum leads to visible acceleration. Preparation also includes releasing control. Control slows movement because it resists uncertainty. Faith accelerates movement because it trusts guidance. Guidance is clearer when control loosens. Loosening control does not mean losing responsibility. It means transferring authority to God. As you prepare, distractions lose appeal. What once demanded attention feels less urgent. This is not disinterest, it is focus sharpening. Focus directs energy. Directed energy accelerates progress. Preparing the atmosphere also includes aligning your schedule. Overcrowded schedules suffocate instruction. Preparation makes room. Room for rest. Room for listening. Room for adjustment. Space is essential for acceleration. Preparation is gentle. It does not force change. It invites readiness. God does not overwhelm you with preparation. He layers it. Layer by layer, clarity builds. Layer by layer, resistance falls away. Layer by layer, confidence forms. As preparation deepens, anxiety fades, not because uncertainty disappears, but because trust increases. Trust stabilizes movement. Stability allows speed without collapse. Preparing for a new season does not require perfection. It requires willingness. Willingness to adjust. Willingness to listen. Willingness to let go. Willingness creates flow. Acceleration arrives when preparation meets instruction. Instruction without preparation overwhelms. Preparation without instruction waits. Tonight, preparation aligns you to recognize instruction when it comes. This preparation is not visible to everyone. Others may not see the internal alignment, the mental clarity, the atmospheric shift. But when movement begins, they will notice the ease. Ease is a sign of alignment. Preparing the spirit, mind, and atmosphere is an act of trust. Trust that God knows what is ahead. Trust that He prepares you before He moves you. Trust that nothing is rushed. Nothing is wasted. As preparation continues, you may feel quieter inside. Less urgency, less pressure. More awareness, more readiness is powerful. Acceleration does not always look fast at first. It looks smooth. It looks intentional. It looks peaceful. Peace is not the absence of movement. It is movement without resistance. Preparation ends resistance before it appears. It strengthens discernment before decisions arise. It clears space before instruction lands. It steadies posture before movement begins. You are not waiting for something to happen. Something is happening within alignment. Alignment is happening in the spirit. Clarity is happening in the mind. Peace is happening in the atmosphere. This preparation is creating capacity to receive instruction without confusion, capacity to move without fear, capacity to adjust without frustration, capacity to accelerate without burnout. As capacity expands, readiness becomes natural. You do not force readiness. It settles. It feels like calm anticipation. Calm anticipation is faith at rest. The new season does not arrive with noise. It arrives with alignment. Alignment prepares you to recognize it when it comes. This preparation is complete in stages. Each stage strengthens trust. Each stage refines focus. Each stage removes weight. You are not striving to be ready. You are allowing readiness to form. Formation is gentler than force. As preparation continues, movement feels closer, not because you are anxious, but because you are aligned. Alignment shortens distance. You are ready to receive instruction when it comes, ready to move when guided, ready to rest when required. Beloved, authority is not aggressive. It is established. When authority speaks, resistance recognizes it immediately. Issuing divine eviction notices is not about force. It is about jurisdiction. You are not begging obstacles to move. You are reminding them that their lease has expired. Anything resisting forward movement does so only because it has been allowed to remain past its assignment. Tonight, allowance ends. Permission is withdrawn. Boundaries are restored. You are not fighting what resists you. You are standing in who you are. Resistance often disguises itself as permanence. It convinces you that what has lingered must belong, that what has delayed must be destined, that what has opposed you must be powerful. But resistance only has power where authority is not exercised. Authority does not shout to be heard. It speaks from position, and position comes from alignment. When you are aligned with God's timing and instruction, resistance becomes exposed, not intimidating. Divine eviction is orderly. Heaven does nothing chaotically. When God removes something, it is because it has completed its function or violated its boundary. Resistance violates boundaries by overstaying, and it drains energy, clouds focus, and delays obedience. Tonight, you are not confronting resistance emotionally. You are addressing it administratively. Administrative authority is calm. Calm authority is effective. Some resistance has been familiar for so long that it feels like part of your identity. You have learned to navigate around it, accommodate it, plan despite it. You adjusted your expectations to coexist with it. But coexistence is not agreement with God's will. God did not anoint you to manage resistance. He authorized you to remove it. Management tolerates. Authority terminates. Eviction notices are issued to anything that occupies space without authorization. Space in your thoughts, space in your time, space in your emotions, space in your obedience. Resistance occupies space quietly. It rarely announces itself. It settles in through delay, distraction, fatigue, confusion, and doubt. But tonight, space is reclaimed. Reclaimed space restores momentum. Some resistance came through repeated obstacles that made you question timing. Others came through discouragement that made you question capacity. Others came through comparison that made you question worth. Resistance attacks through questions before it attacks through circumstances. But questions that undermine identity are not from God. God's questions clarify. Resistance's questions confuse. Tonight, confusion loses access. Issuing eviction notices means you stop negotiating with what God has already judged. Some things were not meant to be fixed, healed, adjusted, or improved. They were meant to end. When God closes a chapter, you do not need to reread it for new meaning. You need to turn the page. Resistance often remains because you keep revisiting what God already resolved. There are resistances tied to fear of movement. Movement threatens familiarity. Familiarity feels safe, even when it is limiting. Resistance tells you staying is safer than stepping, but safety without growth becomes stagnation. God's protection does not imprison, it propels. Tonight, fear-based resistance is removed, not by force, but by truth. Divine eviction is also about reclaiming authority over your internal world. Internal resistance is often louder than external opposition. Thoughts that say, wait longer, prepare more, try later, choose safer, avoid risk. These thoughts sound reasonable, but they delay obedience. Obedience delayed becomes disobedience, disguised as prudence. Tonight, prudence aligns with instruction. Resistance often feeds on past experiences. It reminds you of what failed before, what hurt before, what didn't work before. It uses memory as a weapon, but memory is not prophecy. Past outcomes do not dictate future obedience. God does not require you to succeed the same way to obey again. Obedience is not outcome-based. It is instruction-based. Eviction notices are issued without emotion. Emotion clouds authority. Authority stands on truth. Truth says, this no longer belongs here. Truth says, this season has ended. Truth says, this obstacle does not have jurisdiction over my future. Truth speaks calmly because it does not need to convince. It declares. Some resistance attach itself to your waiting. Waiting seasons can attract unauthorized occupants. Doubt moves in quietly. Fatigue settles. Discouragement decorates the space. Over time, these occupants feel normal, but normal does not mean authorized. Authorized means aligned with God intent. Tonight, alignment restores order. Issuing eviction notices also means removing tolerance. Tolerance is not patience. Patience waits for God. Tolerance waits for change without obedience. Patience is active trust. Tolerance is passive acceptance. Resistance thrives in tolerated environments. Authority eliminates tolerance by setting boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are lines of clarity. They define where something ends and something else begins. Tonight, boundaries are redrawn. Resistance that cross lines is escorted out. You do not owe resistance explanation. Authority does not explain itself to trespassers. Some resistance shows up as distractions that seem harmless, busyness that fills time without producing fruit, conversations that drain clarity, commitments that scatter focus, distractions delay movement by dividing attention. Eviction includes removing distractions that resist direction. Resistance also comes through self-doubt that questions readiness. Self-doubt whispers that you need more preparation, more validation, more certainty. But readiness is not perfection, it is obedience. God does not wait for you to feel ready. He prepares you as you move. Tonight, readiness replaces hesitation. Issuing eviction notices does not mean struggle disappears immediately. It means struggle no longer governs direction. Resistance may attempt to re-enter, but authority recognizes it and denies access. Authority learns discernment through repetition. Each time you stand firm, resistance weakens. There is resistance connected to environments that drain you, places where your spirit feels heavy, situations where clarity diminishes, relationships that require constant self-editing. These environments resist forward movement by exhausting energy needed for obedience. Eviction may require relocation, not physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Divine eviction also includes removing internal narratives that justify delay. Stories you tell yourself about timing, capability, or worth that keep you stationary. These narratives feel logical, but contradict instruction. Authority replaces narrative with truth. As eviction notices are issued, there is often a quiet shift, not dramatic, not loud, but noticeable. A sense of lightness, a reduction of internal noise, a clarity that was missing. This is resistance losing ground. You are not evicting people, you are evicting patterns. You are not rejecting responsibility, you are removing obstruction. You are not abandoning wisdom, you are releasing delay. Authority is precise. It targets what resists movement, not what supports growth. Resistance sometimes hides behind spirituality, over-spiritualizing waiting, using language of humility to avoid obedience, confusing surrender with passivity. God honors humility, but humility obeys. Surrender listens, passivity delays. Tonight, passivity is removed. Issuing eviction notices also requires confidence in God's backing. Authority works because heaven supports it. You are not standing alone. You are standing aligned. Alignment carries backing. Backing ensures effectiveness. Resistance may have been tolerated because you feared what would happen without it. Sometimes resistance gave structure to your days, something to fight, something to manage. Removing resistance can feel unfamiliar at first, but unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. God fills empty space with clarity, not chaos. Eviction creates room for acceleration. Acceleration cannot happen where resistance occupies space. Space is required for movement. Movement requires clearance. Clearance is established through authority. Some resistance has lingered because it appealed to comfort. Comfort zones resist change. They reward predictability over progress. But God's call often leads beyond comfort into growth. Growth is not chaotic when guided, it is purposeful. Issuing eviction notices also means addressing procrastination. Procrastination is resistance masked as delay. Delay says later. Authority says now when instructed. Procrastination feels gentle, but costs momentum. Tonight, momentum is restored. Resistance may attempt to argue its case. It will remind you of risk, costs, uncertainties. Authority does not debate. Authority decides. Decision ends negotiation. As resistance exits, you may notice your posture changing, shoulders lift, breath deepens, thoughts slow. This is alignment settling. Alignment strengthens authority. Divine eviction is not rushed, it is final. It does not require repeated announcements. One clear decision carries lasting effect. Resistance also includes habits that sabotage consistency. Inconsistency slows progress more than obstacles. Authority establishes discipline without rigidity. Discipline supports movement. Eviction notices are issued to anything that resists obedience. Obedience is the measure. Anything that delays, distracts, discourages, or distorts obedience is unauthorized. You are not reclaiming power, you are exercising it. Power was already given, authority activates it. Resistance loses access when you stop feeding it attention. Attention sustains resistance. Authority redirects focus. As eviction completes, peace replaces pressure. Peace confirms authority. Authority rests in peace. You do not need to see resistance leave to know it has lost authority. Authority is not validated by evidence. It is established by alignment. This eviction is gentle but firm, calm but complete, quiet but decisive. Space is being cleared, paths are opening, weight is lifting. What once slowed you no longer defines your pace. What once resisted you no longer governs your direction. Authority stands where hesitation once lingered. Movement feels possible again. Clarity feels accessible. Energy feels restored. Confidence feels grounded. Resistance no longer negotiates. Delay no longer dictates. Distraction no longer diverts. Fear no longer intimidates. Obedience feels natural. Direction feels clear. Steps feel lighter. The path ahead feels open. Space has been reclaimed. Order has been restored. Authority is active. Forward movement is unobstructed. Alignment is established. Acceleration is possible. The eviction has been issued. The space is clear. Beloved, declarations are not wishes spoken aloud. They are authorized statements released from alignment. When you declare, you are not informing heaven, you are aligning yourself with what heaven has already decided. Fresh vision does not arrive because circumstances change. It arrives because perception is renewed. Tonight, vision is not being forced into clarity. It is being unveiled gently. The fog lifts not through effort, but through agreement. You are seeing again, not with strained expectation, but with settled trust. Beloved, as we come to the quiet close of this sacred moment, allow your spirit to settle into what has been released, realigned, and restored. Nothing here was rushed. Nothing was forced. Nothing was overlooked. What needed to end has ended, and what needs to continue will do so with clarity and peace. You do not need to hold this moment tightly. It is already held by God. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts rest. Let your heart remain open and receptive. There is no pressure on what comes next. Pressure has been replaced with trust. Urgency has been replaced with discernment. You are not stepping into the next season guessing. You are stepping in grounded. Even if you do not yet see the full picture, you carry what matters most: alignment. Alignment will guide you when details are still unfolding. Remember that God does not rush you and he does not abandon you. He walks with you at a pace that preserves your peace and protects your strength. What unfolds next will not require you to strive beyond grace. It will ask only for obedience, attentiveness, and trust. You are not required to know everything. You are only required to stay connected. If this moment has ministered to your spirit, take a step of agreement right now. Like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can remain covered and connected through daily prayer. Consistency builds strength, and shared prayer keeps the spirit aligned. This is not about routine. It is about staying positioned. And as a declaration of faith, type amen in the comments. Let it be your agreement with what God is doing beneath the surface and ahead of you. Words spoken in faith settle things in the spirit. Let your amen be calm, confident, and full of trust. Now, take a moment to name your expectation. Comment one thing you are believing God for today. Speak it without fear, without apology, without pressure. What you name in faith becomes something you can steward in prayer. God responds to honest expectation more than perfect language. Carry this peace with you beyond this moment. Let it guide your responses, shape your decisions, and steady your emotions. You do not need to explain what God is doing in you. Let the fruit speak when the time is right. Quiet growth is still growth. As you move forward, remember that alignment does not mean absence of challenge. It means presence of grace. Grace will meet you where effort ends. Grace will supply what strength cannot. You are not alone in what unfolds next. Thus tonight, knowing that nothing is unfinished, what began here will continue gently. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where obedience has brought you, and that is a secure place to stand. Let gratitude remain on your lips, not because everything is clear, but because God is faithful. Gratitude keeps the heart soft and the spirit sensitive. Sensitivity allows you to hear instruction when it comes quietly. May you move forward calmly, think clearly, and rest deeply. May peace guard your heart and clarity guide your steps. And may this closing become a foundation for everything God is about to unfold in the season ahead.